Welcome viewers, it's your Senduza once again on a combined science lecture. Thank you very much for keep on supporting. Yes guys, so as you can see today I want to study in combined science about an insect pollinated flower. So we have our insect pollinated flower and all parts are labeled with their functions. So as we already have our functions, you can read these functions and take note of them. So we want to rush. We have what we call agents of pollination. We have what we call agents of pollination. So here we have two types of agents of pollination, that is insect and wind. So in insect pollination, it is whereby insects, they involve the physical transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. So in this case, as you can see, as the pollen grains are being produced by the anther, they can be automatically deposited on the stigma whenever insects such as bees, flies, and whatsoever, they have that pollen grains on their legs or on their bodies. So what are the adaptations of a flower for insect pollination to occur? What are the adaptations? For instance, number one adaptation is the flower must have bright colored petals in order to attract insects, in order to facilitate insect pollination. Number two, the flower must have a stigma that is below the anthers to facilitate insect pollination. The flower must have anthers that are above the stigma such that pollen grains can sometimes drop from the anther to the stigma. Above all, the flower must have okay, we have explained about it. The flower also must have small quantity pollen grains that are sticky so that they can be transferred by insects. Also anthers that are enclosed in petals so as to facilitate insect pollination. Above all, it must have enclosed stigma below the anthers in order to facilitate insect pollination. This is more about it. So in terms of this, this is what you need to take note of: the adaptations of a flower to insect pollination and whatsoever. And in that case of pollination, we have also what we call types of pollination. We have what we call self-pollination or bisexual plants. What is self-pollination? It takes place when pollen grains transfer from the anther to the stigma on the same plant. That's self-pollination. For instance, if you have a mango tree on your yard and pollen grains that are transferred from the anther to the stigma of a flower on that same mango plant, that's what we see. We have insect pollination. Then after that, cross pollination. Now it is when insects, they transfer pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower of a different plant but of the same species. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a plant of a different plant but of the same species. What I am trying to say, we are having a mango tree on your yard, then on your neighbors, they are also having a mango tree. So the bees, that bee can transfer those pollen grains from the anther to the stigma from your plant in your yard to the plant in the of your neighbor. That is, the pollen grains are now being deposited on that plant on a stigma. That when we say we have a cross pollination. So as we have this cross pollination, once we have what we call advantages of cross pollination. What are the advantages of cross pollination? We have high chances of fertilization, can be done by wind and insects. There is no variation. Disadvantage: poor flowering promotes self-pollination, no variation, it can be affected by rain. So I've tried to evaluate some of the initiation towards pollination. Thank you for your support and your continued. You can like, you can share, you can repost the video in Facebook, Phineas Nduza, Instagram, Phineas Nduza, YouTube, The Intellect. Thank you guys. You can contact the number on the screen for more information.